The lawyer goes back into court, gets the judge to sign an order calling for what we call a judgment debtor rule. So what that is that tells the defendant who lost the case and who owes you $100,000 judgment, that requires that defendant to show up, usually with his or her lawyer, at usually the lawyer who is noticing the judgment debtor rule will be held in his or her conference room, his or her office. Debtor shows up. He has also been told not only to show up at the day and time for this proceeding, but to bring with him all kinds of things, like his last 3 years federal income tax returns. If you have a job, bring your last 6 months of pay stubs. If you own any property, bring the deeds, bring the property descriptions. If you own property and you've had it appraised, bring the appraisal. Bring us your bank statements for the last year. So again, you don't have to take his word for it. So he comes into the other lawyer's conference room, the lawyer for the plaintiff who won the judgment. Again, there's a court reporter present. Again, the defendant is put under oath. This time, he's not asked anything about the case. That's over and done with. Plaintiff won, right? This deposition, in effect, is only about his money and his ability to pay off the judgment. So, if you find out at the judgment debtor rule that he is employed, you can try to get some of your money paid as the plaintiff through a garnishment proceeding. So the way you do that is, after the judgment debtor rule is done, the court reporter types everything up. The lawyer who asked him the questions knows that he's got a job. The lawyer goes back to the court again and asks the court to sign a garnishment order. To whom is a garnishment order directed? Not the lawyer. Employer, correct. The person's employer. I'm sorry. Employer, lawyer, yeah, they all sound right. It's directed to the employer, and what you're saying to the employer is, so we got a judgment against this guy who works for you, and he says he can't pay, so now we have a garnishment order from the judge, and you, the employer, are ordered to withhold a certain amount of money from each of this person's paychecks, cut a separate check for that amount of money you're withholding, and send it to the plaintiff's lawyer. Okay? So you don't leave it up to the good nature of the defendant to cut a check, right? The employer is ordered to do that. Employers hate garnishment orders because it screws up their bookkeeping, right? Plus, they look at it like, seriously, you can't pay your own bills? I gotta be what, your daddy? I gotta pay your bills? I gotta be your accountant? What the hell? Why don't you pay your debts? Man, I don't have it. All right, fine. Employers hate garnishment so much that there's actually a law that says an employee may not be fired for getting one garnishment order. But when that second garnishment order comes in for that past due child support to the ex, oh yeah, baby, you might be out the door. Because employers are just like, they hate that stuff. It screws up, like I said, their accounting, their bookkeeping, so on and so forth. Also, if the defendant really wants to screw the plaintiff over again, how do you take care of this? How do you get rid of that? Quit your job. Then what? Then you gotta pay attention. If he gets another job a few months down the line, okay, great, he's employed again, fine. You gotta go back to court, get a whole new garnishment order directed to the new employer. So, and here's the other thing about garnishment. You can't take his entire salary. You can only take, I think I'm right here. You get to take 25% only of the debtor's disposable income. So disposable income means what is the debtor's and the person garnishing the salaries can get 25% of that. Unless the garnishment order is for child support, in which case you can get 50%. And that's just because public policy behind supporting children that you create is extremely strong. So they can get 50% of your income if it's child support, but any other debt, only 25%. So, $100,000 at 25% is gonna take you a long, long time before you're probably gonna collect your whole amount of money. The guy might die before that ever happens, but it's better than nothing.
Is there
Now,
interest on it?
say it again?
Is there interest on it?
Who's talking? I'm sorry.
Is there interest on it?
Not on the garnishment. Oh, on the judgment? Yes, yes. And that's a really good question, because on any judgment, if you go to court and you win your case and you get a judgment, interest at the so-called judicial interest rate, which is usually tied to like the prime rate, whatever the going prime rate is, begins to run from the date that the plaintiff files the lawsuit until the date the judgment is paid in full. So, that interest keeps running, which means you probably really won't ever get all of it paid for garnishment, yeah.
In the case that the individual that's being garnished passes away, does the person have the right to claim their personal properties to equal the value?
No, that just means the garnishment goes away, but let me get through there. Two more methods through which you can try to collect your money. So garnishment is one. Then there is, you can go again back to court, and these aren't exclusive, you can use more than one, okay? You go back to court where you got the judgment, and you ask the judge to sign a writ of execution. A writ, again, is just an order handed down by a court. So, what a writ of execution is, when the lawyer for the plaintiff was asking questions at this judgment debtor rule, not only did she find out that the defendant is employed, and therefore she garnished wages for her client, she also found out this defendant owns certain property that is not exempt from seizure. The defendant owns certain property that can be seized and sold at a public auction, and the money that it brings goes to the plaintiff to whom he owes this $100,000 judgment. So, if you find out that grandma died and left him a piece of property in Mississippi, undeveloped, just a lot, the question is, what is that worth? If he hasn't had it appraised, the lawyer for the plaintiff can have it appraised, and then go to court and ask for this writ of execution. The judge signs an order telling the sheriff in the county where the property is located, this property has to be seized and sold at a public auction at a sheriff's sale, and the money goes to the plaintiff. Of course, the sheriff who handles the sale gets a little 10% cut off the top for their administrative fees for handling the sale, but the balance of the money then goes to the person to whom the money is owed, the creditor, generally.
So all these things, they cost money filing the
Oh, yeah.
ruling, and does that come out of the plaintiff's money?
Yeah, you're paying for that yourself. I mean, if the judgment also said that the defendant has to pay all court costs, then you might argue that these things should be paid by that defendant too. But let's face it here, you're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, right? You're trying to squeeze something out of, you're trying to get something from nothing, basically. So chances are, if you can get your judgment paid, I leave it alone. Very few people ever manage to get the judgment paid in full, collect all of the interest that ran on it, and all of the costs, when you're in this situation. Now, if the defendant says, okay, fine, I'll pay you, they pay for everything that the court has ordered them to pay. So,
Sorry.
yeah.
Is the writ of execution, is that what you also would use, like, if the person had brokerage accounts or bank accounts, that you could go and
Yeah,
get the
yes.
the
And there are
firm
there's some limitations on how much of that you can get and take, but yeah, you would do, well, it's gonna be between, I think that's what you'd use, because garnishments can also be used for bank accounts, but I don't think for investment accounts and things, so I think a writ of execution. Yes, because you would have, they would have asked them to bring, if you own any stock, bring your stock certificates in, all of that kind of stuff. So probably the writ of execution would be the way to do it.
Is there a limitation on, for instance, owning the property and, let's say I own it with someone else, how can you, sell it, in an auction?
Well, what you can do is talk to the two co-owners and see if the other person would be willing to have the property seized and sold and let that other co-owner have their half of what it brings and you take the other half. So that might not be in the form of a sheriff's sale. If I'm the lawyer for the plaintiff and I'm trying to collect my client's money, and I can find out who the other co-owner is, I get in touch with that person and I say, so here's the deal. He owes us all this money, he's not paying. Do you have any interest at all in just trying to sell the property? Not at a sheriff's sale, let's just list it with the real estate agent. See, let's have it appraised, we'll pay for the appraisal, let's see what it comes back at, would you be willing to do that? You turn your land into cash. If that person goes, yeah, I live in Nevada, I'm never gonna use that property in Mississippi, you know, so yeah, I'd rather have the cash in there, sure, I might go along with that. There are a variety of ways to do it. If the person refuses, you can sometimes force, a co-owner to sell property, but usually that can only be done by the other co-owner. So it's called partition by licitation. You can, the principle in the law is that you cannot be forced to own property, to co-own property with someone else. If my sister and I hate each other's guts and we co-own a piece of property and I don't ever wanna see her or talk to her again, or she me, and I say I wanna have the property sold so I don't have to deal with you on it, taxes or anything like that, I just want my money, and she goes, no, screw you, I'm not selling it. I can go to court and force her to sell it. But that's me because I'm the other co-owner. You're not forced to co-own property with anybody if you don't want to. But in this situation, it's a third party who's trying to force a piece of
So if the
co-owned
other
property,
person
so
doesn't
I
wanna
don't really
sell?
know. Huh?
So if the other person doesn't wanna sell, the other co-owner doesn't
I
wanna sell?
might be able to go in and argue to the court that that person should be forced to sell too, as long as we get a fair price. But it's harder when it's not just the other co-owner. If the other co-owner says, I don't wanna sell either, I'm probably out of luck, yeah.
Is it possible to, buy a co-owner out of their shared land and then force that person to sell it?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can offer the co-owner, yeah. And here's the last one, and that, it's good that you brought that up, because the last remedy is what's called a transfer of property. So that piece of property in Mississippi, if I can talk the defendant into it, I can say, I can propose to the defendant, so we don't need to have the property seized and sold at a sheriff's sale. How about you just deed the property over to us? The property was appraised, it's worth $60,000. How about you just turn the property ownership over to me, give it to me? If the defendant goes, yeah, fine, great, I got a piece of property, now my client's got a piece of property, it ain't cash, but if it appraised for $60,000, she can try to sell it and get some money, or she can keep the property. Maybe one day it'll be worth something, maybe it's got oil on it, who knows, right? So you can work that out too, but that's usually gotta be by agreement of the parties.
Have you ever done something like that before? Cause I can imagine that gets really hairy.
A transfer of the property?
Well, just both, either a writ of execution or transfer. of
I have
property.
done writs of execution before and garnishments.
You think most people don't actually own their houses, it works out like that.
Well, and that's the other issue. If you don't own the property outright, let's say I'm the creditor and you live in a big fancy house that I know because I had my agent and my appraiser go out and look at it, and they came back and told me this house worth $1.5 million. Ooh, that would pay off my $100,000 judgment nicely, right? But when I do the research, if I find out that there's a $900,000 mortgage on that $1.5 million piece of property, that's probably not gonna do me a whole heck of a lot of good. Because what I'm doing is I'm getting the bank's money for them, right? Once it's seized, if it's seized and sold at a sheriff's sale, whoever has the mortgage on it comes first. They prime everybody, including my client who got this big fat judgment. So if I have that property property seized and sold, but I gotta turn around and hand 3/4 of what it brings in the sale off to the mortgage company, then I'm not getting anywhere. So keeping your home mortgaged also helps protect it from creditor seizure. Not completely, but basically, most creditors are gonna go, well, hell, I said 100,000, let's say it's, a $1.25 million mortgage on the house. I'm not gonna get any cash out of that. By the time the sheriff takes his cut, if we sell it, the mortgage company's gonna take everything, and they're probably not gonna get paid in full. So they're still gonna be owed money, and I'm gonna be at the bottom of the list, I ain't getting anything. That's exactly what happens. So if you do one or more of these things, you squeeze that turnip as hard as you can, and you still have not gotten the full amount of money that is owed to you by this judgment. Then what you do is you take your little judgment and you record it in the parish where the person lives. Now, why is that important? Well, and that really is something you can do right after you get the judgment and they tell you, I can't pay you. You go down to the courthouse and you record your judgment in the mortgage office and the sales office, the real estate sales or conveyance office. What that does for you is, and then you do all of this and you find out this person owns nothing, doesn't have a job, owns nothing that you can seize and sell and get paid that way. So you got your judgment recorded. What that means is, if in the future, that same person, that same defendant, acquires a piece of property in that parish where you've recorded your judgment, then your judgment attaches to that new piece of property. And what that means is, when that defendant goes to sell that new piece of property, he's gonna have to pay your judgment off, because your judgment will be like a lien or a claim against the new property. In other words, if he buys it and then he wants to sell it 5 years later, he's not gonna be able to give a clear title of ownership to the person that wants to buy this new property, right? Because you recorded your judgment, so your judgment just latches right on to that house, and it's like he cannot sell it unless he pays off all liens and claims that are against the house, and your judgment's gonna be one of them. Now, the trick there is, what if he buys a piece of property not in Orleans Parish, where you got your judgment, and where he used to live, but in Iberville Parish? Well, if I don't have my judgment recorded in Iberville Parish, my judgment does not attach to his new property. So that recording the judgment is lovely if you're dealing with if the defendant that owes you money is like a major corporation, and they're very unlikely to be uprooted and moved somewhere. But if it's an individual person, the only way your recorded judgment acts as a claim against any property they acquire in the future is if your judgment is recorded in the same county or parish where they acquire that property. Let's face it, nobody wants to spend the money to record your judgment, even in every parish in Louisiana. There's 64 parishes, right? This costs like $100 or so to file, or more these days. So, that's kind of a hit or miss proposition. But the only other thing you can do, let's say you garnish his wages, you seize that piece of property in Mississippi, and all told you recovered $70,000 for your client, to whom this person owes $100,000. So your client's still left holding the bag. I'm owed 30 grand more, and I'm out of options. What you do then, your last option, is you go yet again back to court. You file a new lawsuit. This one is not necessarily going to be assigned to the same judge who heard the case. And that new lawsuit is called a petition for deficiency judgment. Deficiency here means the balance. So in your petition for deficiency judgment, you say, so Judge, I brought this case against this defendant. We went to trial. I won. He appealed. I won. He appealed again. I won. Then he said he couldn't pay. You go through this whole thing. did the JD rule, I found out he had a job, we garnished his wages, we got this much from the garnishment, found out he owned a piece of property, we did a writ of execution, had the property seized and sold. All of that only brought $70,000 and he owes $100,000. So, please give us another judgment in this new lawsuit, a personal judgment against this defendant for the $30,000. Are you likely to collect it? Probably not, but you don't have to just forfeit the $30,000. There is this other legal proceeding, a deficiency judgment proceeding. If you get the deficiency judgment, you then take that judgment and record it. And again, if he acquires property in the same parish where you have that judgment recorded in the future, you can collect it. Now, keep in mind, all of these are remedies, and they're certainly better than nothing and just letting somebody screw you over. But there's an awful lot of ifs. I mean, you gotta keep up with this person, right? Where are they living now? If they buy a piece of property, where did they buy this piece of property? And then you gotta go, that he won't be able to sell it until he pays off your lien, but, you may have to go have that new piece of property seized and sold at a public auction to get your money. So, at some point, most people go, enough is enough. That's it. So, I've had enough, I've spent enough money chasing this guy, I'm just gonna, suffer the loss. Yeah.
Is this for civil and criminal, or just civil?
No, this is all civil. This is all about money judgments. Yeah, not criminal.
But there could be judgments in criminal.
Not for money usually. Usually a criminal proceeding puts you in jail or executes you. Huh?
Restitution.
Well, restitution, yeah, I guess in that sense, if you've been ordered to pay restitution, yeah, thank you. That'll work. Like, okay, you're gonna go to jail for 6 months and you're gonna pay the lady back $2,500 for the TV you stole. So yeah. But mostly, you see this much more often in civil lawsuits. Any questions about any of this? I know chapter 2 is like, major, so make sure you're studying that. A lot of the questions will come from that. And let me just go ahead and do chapter 3 and I'll let y'all out a little bit early. So chapter 3 is called Alternative Dispute Resolution. Alternative way, in other words, alternative means of people resolving their disputes. Alternative to what? Anybody know? Well, yeah, kind of. Say it again?
Negotiation, mediation.
That's what we're talking about. Those are the alternative ways of resolving disputes. So there are 3 major forms of ADR, or alternative dispute resolution, that can be used by parties in place of going to court and filing a lawsuit and going through all this crap that we just talked about. Alternative dispute resolution includes, you've heard 2 of them, negotiation.
Arbitration.
We're coming on that one. There's one more in between called mediation. And yes, arbitration. So these are methods of parties who have a dispute, working out their dispute, agreeing on some sort of settlement or resolution without going to court, without filing a lawsuit and going to all that expense and taking all that time to have your case tried to a judge or a jury. So these are the 3 major ways. Negotiation is probably, generally speaking, the least effective of these 3 methods, because negotiation simply involves the parties to the dispute getting together with or without lawyers to discuss the dispute, the argument, and come to an agreement about how to resolve it. So, the parties have to really, really want to resolve it, because there's nobody with a hammer standing over the, holding that over the heads of the parties who can force them to do anything in negotiation. So negotiation all by itself is not effective, again, unless the parties to the dispute really are willing to compromise. If both parties come to the table and say, let's talk about this, and they're both willing to give up some of what they want from the other one, then negotiation might work. But there's no way to force the parties to agree. So negotiation is probably more effective in family law kind of cases, where you have, and this isn't typical, but where you have two rational human beings who realize that if they insist on each of them paying thousands and thousands of dollars to lawyers to hash this out, it's only gonna cost you a lot more money, and neither one of you is probably gonna be happy. And it's gonna get very nasty, and of course, if there are children involved, that's just a really bad situation. So, if you have two relatively rational people who probably still hate each other's guts, but who, for the interest, in the best interest of their children, they wanna not drag each other through court, they wanna get this behind them, then negotiation might indeed work. It probably doesn't work all that often if all you have are the two parties talking to each other. It's probably more helpful to have an advocate, like a lawyer on each side, but then when you get lawyers involved, oh my God, who knows what happens, right? So